Hey everyone, Sycra here, and today I'm joined by Alpaki, Bob Meatbag, Decru, Nick, and Flavia, and we're just going to be doing our stream again, chatting, drawing, stuff like that. So yeah, I should go over our last challenge on the Sycra Discord, which you can get access to if you're either a patron or a YouTube member. And we do these weekly challenges. So the last one we did was sort of interesting. It was like there was like this ink blot, this Rorschach test, Rorschach, shock. I don't know. Anyway, and we made different things out of the thing we saw. So it started like this, and then I think this is Florentine's and. I think Jingai, Nick, oh, they're going too fast. I think that was Hex, but anyway, yeah, it was fun, cool, very interesting thing. So there's that. And as usual, feel free to ask questions if you have any, and we'll do our best to answer them. So, what was the topic for today? I guess I was thinking about elaborating more on how when people say things, like I'll say, for instance, it's okay to play video games. It's fine. You don't have to feel like you shouldn't because I don't know, it's wrong to do something like that. But at the same time, a part of me is like, yeah, but don't do too much, because if you play too many video games, it is a time sink and it will take away from time you could be devoting to things that are important like art. If I say, for instance, art should be fun. Make sure you focus on doing what's fun. That's fair. But I also have the feeling of, but sometimes it's not fun. So you want it to also be worthwhile so you can tolerate doing things that are not fun, because it's not always fun. And I just realized, like, for anything I say, there's usually like a caveat where it's not always that way. So, yeah. Oh, Wave Robin has a question. Hi Sycra, you're still working on your comic, right? If so, what kind of format are you making it in and why, i.e. webtoon, manga, etc.? Right now, I'm aiming for a manga, I'm just trying to make it like Shonen Jump in terms of format. Initially, I wanted to make a webtoon, and we did the first 16 episodes as a webtoon. And I found that, I think it's just because I never grew up reading web comics, but I did like manga, so like emotionally I'm moved more by the manga format, and like the idea of having a printed thing in my hands feels nice, so that's why I'm kind of thinking about it that way. But then I would try to adapt it for a webtoon as well. Okay, so anyone have anything they want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, what about the topic you just talked about before you interrupted yourself with a question?
Oh, I'm doing it right. What about it? Yeah.
Was it something? It was something about, what was it? It's okay to do the things that's fun, but
Yeah, kind of like
balance.
Yeah, the balance between discipline and how would I say it? Fun, or
Yeah, like I think it was it's okay, like you say, it's okay to have fun or play video games, but sometimes it's not, I guess.
Yeah, like you can go overboard and it becomes bad and it's harmful. And I think the reason these things need to be said is just because there's a lack of balance usually in terms of how we talk or think about things, you'll often get advice, especially in YouTube videos, that sound very definite. Like, oh, this is the right way to do things, and you should be doing this. And that's what I heard when I was in my, I guess, beginner stage. I heard a lot of people talking about don't play video games. Like, you're wasting your time on things like video games. You've got to commit to art. And I did. And then I found that I wasn't enjoying life as much because I enjoyed playing games. So there was sort of like, I overdid it in one direction. And then you've got to find the in-between. The things where it's like, well, you can't play too much because then you're taking time away from stuff you probably should be putting more time into, because art is difficult. But that's why I also say to put in a lot of time. Like, it's weird. It feels like I have to give contradictory advice all the time. And like, I'll say don't practice, and then someone might say, well, I'm really struggling with this thing, and it's like, oh yeah, you got to practice this. It's like, wait, didn't you just say don't practice? So that thing, the being like, everything's contextual, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think
it's not just like a simple 1-2 sort of thing. Like, it seems like things are always complicated, right? It depends on the situation, the person.
Yeah. Yeah, because I found for myself, I think I was getting a little bit too much into video games, and I'm trying to not. And it kind of goes against what I was saying of like, oh, if you just want to play games, you should play games. Like, yeah, but sometimes you'll recognize that it's like, I'm devoting too much time into this. I've got to focus more on the art side of things. I guess skill-based stuff, or like not losing your skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess everything in moderation is kind of difficult to sell. It's much easier to say, like, you should do this or that.
Yeah, I had this experience recently where I was not playing games or doing anything for a long time. I was just focusing on art for the past, like, 3 months or so. And it just got to a point where I was just stressed and burned out, and I didn't know why. And I was like, oh, I have no ideas anymore. Like, I can put pen to paper, but I feel like I've drawn everything that's on my mind. And it's just because I've been stuck in a room with myself. And so, of course, there's going to be no new stimuli. And then I was just like, okay, I looked around for some video games and played them past couple days. And now I'm feeling much better. Like, I played a game that had, like, some robots in it. I'm like, oh, wait, I like these. These are fun. And started drawing those. And you need outside sources to exist as a person, so you can't just be like, oh, I never do anything fun, I only draw, all my life is drawing.
Mm-hmm.
I think this becomes very like a high level sort of decision, because you're saying, like, I've been playing a lot of video games, but now I feel like I shouldn't. But that's sort of like, kind of like you're actually following the advice of playing a lot of video games if you want to play it, because you played a lot and now you feel like you want to do more art after you played so much. So it's it does require, though, that that you're like more aware, I guess, of your present situation. Like, it sounds kind of like meditation, but that's kind of like what it is. It's kind of like, if you can just zoom out and just realize what you're doing right now, then it's okay. But I think if you get into things like video games or just like easy things without having necessarily that awareness, then it can become kind of bad. At least I have that kind of experience with video games a lot, which only lately, like I guess, like in the past few years, I've come to realize just how much it's not just video games, but like social media and all that stuff. It's just kind of designed to sort of hack your brain, and you have to actually be aware of it to fight that, I think. Like, it's not bad to engage in those things, but you just have to realize that there is a point where you're too consumed into it to realize the rest of your situation, I guess.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Which goes back to the moderation thing as well. But yeah, I guess also just like you're also saying, like, learn who you are and what you need in any given moment.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like ideally you would have that vision whenever, and at least for me, I found that it was almost always a thing about going really deep into like what I'm feeling at certain times and why I'm feeling those kinds of things. And I found that if I got really deep into those things, I could sort of like change my wants. Like, instead of, oh, I just want to play video games all day, like I changed my like brain into wanting other things than just like play video games all the time.
Yeah.
It's in the time that I sort of grew out of, or not grew out of, but like I grew dispatient with games because I would have this nagging thing like, oh, I should be drawing, and lived with almost none for a really long time, that I then came back, and now I'm at this level where if I do play a game, it's like play 2 hours or something, and then I'll draw for 4 after or something, and it's like a good balance in my mind because I don't have as much desire for it because I'm not as like caught up in that world. So yeah, just understanding yourself, I guess, and what balances work for you versus someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think balance is something that's very, very easy to forget, especially if you have some sort of hyper focus on one thing or another. It's very easy to kind of let everything else drop. But I feel like as humans, we kind of have a healthy set of needs that are not just one type, just art, just games. So to cycle through those needs is kind of natural. So if you play games, you'll get tired of them. You'll get tired of them eventually, except I guess if you're escaping from something or if you're addicted. But if you're doing art a lot, you kind of need to refresh and get some contrast from it. Otherwise, you kind of lose perspective and your thinking gets more stale. At least for me, I found. Hard to think, oh, one versus the other. I'm doing art, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, or no.
Yeah, it's
all
just
of it.
the bite-sized way of framing things, and sometimes I do that, and it's not good. It shouldn't be so lax with how I say things. I think it's kind of like the reading the comments. D-Man says, let's see, what did he say? You can't really force yourself to love something, especially if it's not instantly gratifying. Just get disciplined and draw regularly. it's kind of that type of thing, like just so and so thing that can be dangerous because it sounds good because it's simple, but it's like, well, yeah, but there's a bunch of just get discipline and draw regularly is not necessarily applicable to everyone at every stage, and it might not even be the right solution sometimes. Like the just things, because I do this too. I say, oh, just, and then I'll say a thing, and it feels like, okay, this is simple, and I've managed to break it down into its essential component, but by doing so, I'm also reducing it to something it's not.
Yeah, I think discipline is kind of complicated word, I guess, because I remember that video you posted, Sycra, like one of the latest ones. It was about like the person who I think was just like not enjoying art, but was using up discipline to power through it versus the people who were enjoying it. And in my own experience, like I've done this whole discipline thing so many times, like not just art, but like all sorts of other things, like doing exercise and like going to the gym and stuff, where it's like I'm so motivated to do this thing for like, like 2-3 weeks. And then after that, the one day I'm like, I don't feel like doing it. And then from then on, I just like stop doing it altogether. So that's why, like, I think that's why I was saying, like, the thing that worked for me was not really the discipline part, but more of really analyzing my like feelings and actually like trying to align my feelings into doing the things that are not like easy to do, like playing video games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I discovered recently for the first time, and why I feel I've been doing very well lately, is just that I don't think it's using discipline to do something like drawing. I think it's using some level of discipline to get yourself in the headspace to draw, which is different. Because it's not like you're sitting there forcing yourself, okay, put pen on paper, put pen on paper. It's like you use the discipline to, like, at least for me, to maybe clean up around the house or schedule some appointments that are looming over you, or like, make yourself a healthy breakfast or something, so that and then you do all these things, and then you're like in a good mood after, because you feel like there's a lot of weight off your chest, or you feel nice because you did something that you find relaxing, and you've like learned what relaxes you, and then you use that discipline to get yourself in like a relaxed state, and then you'll want to draw, right? Or at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
We have some questions and comments from chat here. Yevsan says, could you go more into the science of the breaks being helpful thing? I played Breath of the Wild for the first time in a month, and I was way better than when I last played.
Yeah, so the way I understand it is that you consolidate information and process it when you sleep or during a break. When you're not doing that, you give your subconscious time to figure things out. And it's very useful, very effective. Because if you don't, what you're working with is kind of your brain as it is, as opposed to your brain after it's processed all that information. So I think of it kind of like digestion, where the same way you eat food, but then you have to digest it before your body does something with it. You have to metabolize it. You kind of have the same thing with information that you acquire. You need time to process that. I feel like even with dreams, a lot of times what dreams I mean, dreams can be many different things, but sometimes it's about just processing things that are unprocessed, or trying to bring to attention something. Sometimes it's just like, this is what happened today, and then the subconscious is just mulling it over and making it, but sometimes it's trying to tell you something. So anyway, that's a different topic, the dream thing. But the point is that you need time to process the things you've learned, and that's why you can get better when you're not doing stuff for a while. And also when you don't come in with expectation. I think expectation is also one of those tricky things to deal with.
I think that ties in pretty well with the do everything in moderation too, because it's better to, like, if you have 10 hours to learn something, it's better if you learn 2 hours for 5 days than try and cram everything in one day, like for 10 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also like periods where sometimes you want to take things slow, but then you won't always be at that speed. So one of the things if I want to do something often, the first thing I'll do is try and make a situation where I can do it often. So that seems, I need to explain it. Okay. So I wanted to get into writing more because I hadn't been writing a lot. So I made it so every day the first thing I do is I write something. And it doesn't need to be good. It doesn't need to be bad. It doesn't need to be for a long time. Obviously it doesn't need to be bad. Well, anyway, it doesn't need to be good, and it doesn't need to be for a long time, but I just need to do that. And usually the act of starting to write means that I will tend to do at least a little bit, and it's just getting yourself into a habit. And then someone might say early on, like, well, what do you think you can be a writer by only writing 3 minutes every day or something? Let's say like all you could muster was 3 minutes. And I would say it goes back to that thing about balance. Like, yes, in the beginning, yes. So it's the same with like exercises, like with pull-ups, for instance. I like to do pull-ups because they're good body weight exercises, but sometimes I just don't have the energy, and I have very, very poor stamina and things. But if I try and fail, like I can't even do one because I'm so out of shape, I find I should still try to do it, because what happens is then I'll wait a bit and then try again, and usually I can get back into it, but it's more like your muscles need time to adjust again. And so even doing something poorly is better than not doing it at all.
There's a comment from Wave. Robin says, have any of you been injured from working/drawing too much?
Mm-hmm. I think at least 2 of us here.
I've been injured from drawing, not necessarily too much, but improperly. So
You drew on a Cintiq.
Yeah, I drew on your Cintiq, and it wrecked me for months. And yeah, I learned that I definitely need tools that are my size. So yeah.
I don't know if Darkest Dungeon counts as work.
Yeah. But it is something where you can learn not to injure yourself by doing exercises. So stretching taking time to look up RSI exercises if you haven't. There's like exercises specifically for coping with repetitive stress injuries, and if you just do those anyway, you prevent yourself from getting into the super bad state.
Irrelevant name says, how do you get drawing addiction? I think
for sure. I get the idea of like you want to draw all the time. I think having fun doing what you want to do is the best way to do it. Like find what you're really interested in and then focus on that. I think that's a good way of developing a love for it, where it's just stuff you like to do. Like make sure the brush you use is a brush you like to use, or the paper you use is nice, the subject matter that you use is interesting to you. And I think also another thing you can do is to ensure that your result is good. And one of the ways you can do that is the way I try to do that is with manageable chunks. So I'll do I'll break things down into simpler components and also use reference so that you're excited by the end result and it makes you want to do more. So even if the process might not be, oh, I didn't do this from imagination like I wanted, because I used to have this, I still have this thing where ideally I just like to draw. Like I just draw and good stuff comes out. But often what happens is it's not that you just draw and good stuff comes out. It's like you draw and then it doesn't turn out like what you have in your head and you get discouraged. So I feel like, okay, it's important to sort of... Oh man, again? Okay, sorry. My brain is just going, like, forgetting how to brain. I don't remember. Drawing addiction? Jesus.
You're saying it's good to do things that you enjoy in order to want to draw more often.
Yeah.
You should allow yourself to use tools to have fun so that you don't get discouraged.
Yeah, just do whatever makes the experience better. And don't do what makes the experience worse. So that you keep working more.
Yeah, Kirill Polowski says the key principle here is that you create positive emotion associated with drawing and your brain wants more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very much so.
Okay, so related to the whole disciplines thing, D-Man says, I think it's easier the older you get to break away from addictive things. You start to feel like you're running out of time. It's negative but realistic. You don't want to wind up in a car accident and have your last thought be, I spend most of my life playing games and instead of making that huge painting I said I would do.
Yeah.
Fear is a way, I guess, to think of things. It doesn't really work for me, but I've tried to scare myself into stuff, but I find positive reinforcement for me is better.
Yeah, I really would rather have fun and do what I want to do. And like I used to have this, I want to do a big thing, and I still have it. Like I have a big thing or a couple of big things I want to do, but I find that thinking about it in a certain way kind of changes the way I perceive doing it, like whether or not I will have fun doing it. If I think about it like, oh, I want to do my big thing, what am I really focused on? Like as if I don't do this, I'll have not done something important. And that sounds good, but often what happens is it leads to feeling like I need to do this in order to be content, and if I don't, I'm a loser or something. For me, it gets toxic pretty quick. So I don't know. I'm not saying that's how it is for you, but just sometimes it can kind of take the fun out of things. Whereas if you're just having fun, you want to work. Like, it's not hard to work, and it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. So I think, yeah, making it play, that's probably what I should have just said as an answer. Make sure you're playing and not working, or you're figuring something out for a purpose. Like, I'm doing this because when I do, like, I'm studying how materials function so that I can make this image with a very shiny, I don't know, latex or something, whatever you want to do, gold, whatever material.
Christopher Infante says, I force myself by saying, just draw a few lines for 15 minutes and see how you feel. Usually it turns to an hour. Feel good about accomplishing an important goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Just like, if you give yourself very easy, accomplishable goals, you're likely going to do more, and in the long run, you will do more. And you're giving your brain just that little bit to process, to feed on. So every day you get a little bit better, because you're always exposing yourself to interesting, or not interesting, but like useful things. You got to feed your brain.
Are there any questions?
Oh,
sorry, my bad. I was messing with my mute thing. There's a question from Mentally Untouchable. Does drawing from reference help memorize subjects better than just drawing from imagination?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But you want to, like, even better than just drawing from reference is observe what you're drawing. So it's not actually the drawing that helps you, it's the observation. And so when people say, you got to draw to get better at drawing, it's like, yeah, but the thing that you really want to do is get better at observation. And people assume, and this is what screwed me over, is that the assumption from most artists is that if you draw, you will be paying attention to the right things. And for me, what I was doing is not that. So I wasn't gaining from drawing from reference, because when I was looking at reference, I was just copying what I saw, and I was trying to get it accurate to what I saw. I wasn't understanding that it's not about trying to get it exactly as what you see. It's trying to break it down into something you can understand and reuse. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just like, yeah, that's definitely how it is for me too. For once, for once we work the same way. Because if I just draw something from reference, I won't really know how to manipulate it. But if I draw it from imagination, then look back at the reference and see what's the difference and analyze it, and it's a lot more useful information.
Yeah. I did this very practically recently, where I almost my whole like career drawing, I don't know, lifetime drawing, what's the word, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've like not used reference, and I recently tried it out because I was drawing specific stuff, I was drawing this like shiny latex, and I'm like, how does reflections work? And I did a drawing from reference, and I just noticed that, because usually in the past it hasn't helped me, but this time I was like invested in like wanting to make it look good. So I'm like, why does my image look bad? Dang it. But just in that, asking that question, I was like, oh, well, why does this work? And then eventually I learned like really simple rules. Like for that material, if you draw a very very slightly lighter area that's like large, and then one really bright, really small highlight in the center of the larger, only barely highlighted area, it looks like perfect, like every time. Like a simple rule that you could like write down.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of not necessarily learning how to draw from reference in a one for one way. You're trying to derive the nature of the thing and what makes a thing look like a thing. Like what makes something look reflective as opposed to what do the highlights on this particular metal spoon look like? You just want to learn, okay, how do I make things look generally like metal?
Yeah, you're trying to extract a symbol of the perception.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it? How do you replicate this and signify it for further images?
Kirill Polewski says, a follow-up question regarding drawing from reference. How to get the most out of it and make it less boring and mechanical?
I think that's the thing. Like, first of all, find something you actually want to do. So I like drawing things that have like a squishy texture, I guess, like a jelly-like texture. I find that appealing. So if I try to learn how to do that, I'm going to have a lot more success than if I'm using, or if I'm just doing something because someone else said to do it, or I have this like need. When it comes to clothing, it's usually like I've gotten better with clothing because I've been trying to do a specific character who is wearing that clothing. So it's not random. I'm not trying to learn quote unquote folds or something like that. Like I'm not making it very, I guess, specific. I'm just, well, it's both. No, I am making it specific, but it's specific to something I want to do on an image I want to make. It's not randomly just trying to learn for the sake of learning. It's very specific. So the more you... That's why it works with OCs, for instance. So if you have an original character that you care for, you have like an emotional investment in that character, then you are more likely to want to do things with that character. Like you want to make them have clothing that makes sense, for instance, because that's what they wear and you care about them, you care about what happens to them, and that care makes things better. So I had a teacher who wanted me to do still lifes, and then what he said, and I got the gist of it, even though I don't necessarily do this all the time, is I think it was like some vegetables. I think there was like a big eggplant or something, and there were maybe some were fruits, like an orange or something. Let's just say it was, for the sake of the anecdote, let's just say it was like an orange and an eggplant. Okay, so he said to like think of the eggplant like the orange's big brother, and then they were just sitting on a table together, and suddenly the eggplant had this protective feeling to it, and the orange was like being cared for, and it was so much easier to do the still life. Like just attributing some kind of personality to these inanimate objects made them so much more interesting for me to do, to like draw, to want to do that. I think even better would have been if I was actually doing something that I cared about more than that. But yeah, that like do what makes you emotionally invested in the thing. And don't shy away from difficulty. Like, I wouldn't say, for instance, let's say I wanted to draw sports cars. I wouldn't tell myself, well, sports cars are really hard, so you should start by drawing boxes. And I mean, it helps to know how to draw boxes, but I think for myself, like, at what point am I going to get bored and want to do something else because I've given myself this, oh, you need to draw boxes thing?
Yeah, I think we've got such a big battery that we're not really using. I think there's this mystique of, yeah, grind it out and hard work and tough it out and no pain, no gain. And I think there is something to be said for that, but we're not really distinguishing between when do you need which method of practice or learning, or when do you need to play and when do you need to rest, or when do you need to work, or when do you really need to grind it out and push past your boredom or your, I don't know, hurdles and slumps of being ineffective, or like how do you recognize when you're tired, and when do you listen to yourself and when do you listen to your rational voice? Because sometimes your rational voice can lead you astray and make you burn out or make you follow the wrong direction or just send you down a rabbit hole of draw unconnected things and practice things that might be useful to others but not to you.
Yeah. I think another thing I found that really made studies better, like in terms of like learning to draw objects and stuff that I'm not, I guess I would consider that a study. But anyway, learning to draw objects, what made it better was translating the thing into my style when I was doing it. So I would not just look at the thing, but sort of like, okay, so here's an object, let's say a water bottle. How would I translate that into a style that I like? What are the shapes? How would I interpret it? And that made it more enjoyable because I was using more of my brain and I was having to think about like what shapes I like and what shapes the thing is composed of, and then what do I do with those? How do I maintain the essence of that? And so simplification also, even if you don't necessarily stylize, but you just simplify, that can make the exercise a bit more interesting. It's almost like the more you do, the more fun it gets because you can find more. So once you understand about how things are made, you can focus on like why it's that way. So when you look at, like, if I look at a bottle cap, I might look at like, well, it has a bunch of ridges on the surface of the cap on the side plane, and I can remember that as a story. Like bottle caps have ridges on the side plane, I guess, that goes around like the that whatever, you know what I mean, I think. And then why do they do that? Well, they do that so it's easier to grip. Oh yeah. So if I want to make things grippable, having like little indents to make the surface not smooth would be a good idea. Not only can I apply that to bottle caps, but now anytime I'm dealing with a thing like that, I can, like, oh, I'm drawing a gun and it has a handle, and oh, that would slip out of your hand unless there's like a different texture, a surface texture that's easier to grab onto, that is more rough. Is there such a thing? Yeah, there is. Oh, that's cool. It's like the bottle cap. So this type of framing, this observation thing becomes fun because you get to learn how things are made and what the properties of things are. And I just think that makes it more interesting.
Okay, I got a question from a Spunsy. I have the opposite problem of a perfectionist. I draw very quickly and draw the same things over and over again. It's not really enjoyable and I want to break out of this. What can I do?
Find someone who's doing work you really, really like that is very similar to where you want to be, especially for a certain image. Look at what they're doing that you're not doing. and then try to focus on that. Try to get your own image to that level. Like, for instance, maybe you do sloppy cross-hatching or like quick scribbly shading, and then you notice in the images you like, it's like, oh, they have very deliberate shading that goes over the form and describes the contour. They're much more careful with their cross-hatching. It doesn't look so random. And then you could observe that, like, what kind of marks are they making? How do I do that? How can I incorporate that? And now you're sort of shifting your mind and slowing down, and maybe it's something like line width, and you want to focus on varying your line width because you notice, like, well, I just do quick sketches and everything's rough and like feels like a pencil, and it's cool, it's energetic, but I really admire this artist who has really nice inks, and it's like, why? Then you notice, oh, when the things are closer, the line width gets darker and heavier. When things are further away, it's thinner. Okay, so start to incorporate that, and that should give you plenty to work with, because you'll have people you're kind of trying to reach the level of. Sometimes it helps. I try to tell myself, like, imagine you're working for the same company as this person, and you're supposed to make work that sort of matches that skill level. How do you do it? And it becomes like a difficult problem, but a interesting one.
Okay, so we got some comments from John Tortolito. He says, "Hello, new to stream. What you doing? What you doing? Not trying to be rude. Just a question, Sycra."
Oh, we're just chatting about a art topic and also drawing on Magma Studio together and taking questions from the chat.
It happens every Sunday. Tune in next time.
Yep, that too. All of that.
Okay, so there are a few AI questions left. Do you guys want to talk about that, or?
All right. I guess
Okay.
if we don't have other questions, sure. Let's go for AI again.
Okay. So Jeremiah's Bjorkman says, "Perhaps I joined late and missed it, but if not, what are your thoughts on the development of AI picture generators? I don't want to call it AI art."
I think we've talked about this in other streams, but I think generally it goes back to, it's a tool. It's useful for certain things. It's not useful for certain things. There's a bunch of ethical issues, but yeah, is that it? Just the stuff we've already talked about, or are there other?
Pretty much. The other question is from Elfoys. Says, with the advances of AI that allows almost everyone to create images technically good, what can a artist do to stand out? Being a master in one subject, getting good ideas, have a unique style?
I think ideas and style are a big one, but go ahead, Alpaki.
Also, people are curious. We had like really good talk, I feel like, with Cynics. So the live stream, if you go into the Cypress VODs with Cynics, we had a good discussion about this the other week. I think it's maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah,
it's
like
memory.
all. Yeah, we'll answer like so many questions about AI.
I have a topic if there's not any more. Or
Sure.
a question for you guys if there's not any more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been running into an issue where I've been like pretty productive. I feel decent about stuff lately, but I'm wanting to take stuff to like a next level where, like, you know, I'm decently happy with where my art's at, but I want to, you know, incorporate more story and do more things. And I have this issue where I'm trying to figure out whether my lack of motivation to go into deeper topics is a lack of like desire to, like, do I really want to, or is it just something that like I hear from others is good and that I value, but maybe it's not something that I enjoy. And I also had a similar thing where I was considering like either like comic making or minor game dev or stuff like that. But whenever I start to get into the topic, I have this issue where it's like I lose motivation at some point, and I'm trying to figure out if it's like a thing I push through or if it's like a sign that like, oh, you're just not into this. You know, I don't know if you guys have similar issues.
Were you into it as a kid? I find usually that will answer the question of whether I want to be into it. It's like, was this something you used to do anyway when you didn't have like, oh, you do this because it's good for you. Rather, you just did this of your own accord. Is this something you would have done anyway? And I find if the answer is yes, then I should like try more. And if the answer is no, it usually is sure, maybe don't do it.
So whether I did it as a kid or not.
Yeah, because I was surprised at how many things I didn't realize that I did. So I didn't want to make comics because comics seemed hard and stuff. And then I remembered eventually, because I have a lot of memory problems. But I remembered that it's like, wait a minute, I used to draw comics all the time when I was in grade 7 or 7th grade. I don't know how. I think Canadians and Americans call it different things. But yeah.
I mean, would that mean like, so because I was considering game dev recently, just like minor stuff, like maybe like I looked at RPG Maker, but I'm like, it's a little limiting this or that. But like I did some game dev as a kid for a bit, but I gave up on it because it was like too difficult. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out is like, do I have this desire like within me that is killed by this realization of how much work this is going to be because I've done enough of it to know how hard it is? And so like, it's just my desire doesn't outweigh the difficulty, or is it that the desire just isn't strong enough? Like, I don't know. Maybe I should just try to push through and see how it goes. But
I think so. That's what I was gonna suggest. RPG Maker can be fun. Even the limitations, sometimes just solving like the puzzle of how much can you do with this is interesting. Doing things you didn't think you could do. But yeah. And you'll learn by doing whether or not it's something you want to do by trying it. I don't think it takes that long to realize whether it's really something interesting to you. And the other thing is that sometimes things aren't interesting until they are, and then they're fine. So I had this experience with lasso tools, for instance. I never liked using them for many, many years, and I would see people use them. And I thought, like, yeah, sure. But then every time I used it, I felt bad. I didn't want to use them. And now I use them all the time because there was just a point where I was like, I should try that lasso tool thing again. And then, I don't know, maybe I'd processed enough that it wasn't so difficult anymore, and then I liked it.
Yeah, it's just been weird for me because I keep going back and forth on these things. Like I've tried game dev like a number of times, for example. And it never, like I always get tired of it, but I'm like, I wonder if me going back to it is like foolish, or if that means like, oh, hey, you should really try it out. So I guess I'll just give it another decent try, but it's always a struggle.
I think the fact that it keeps popping up again is probably also something, like you wouldn't have this idea of, like, if it's recurrent, it's probably significant for some reason.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense.
Let's see. Okay, Aini has... that's just a comment. I was watching Light and Shadow videos many years ago and discovered your channel. They were really helpful. I'm glad. Okay, Hodstrut has a question. How do you learn from better artists but have no sort of clues other than their best art? You don't know how to dissect their art. Usually, like nowadays, there are so many people sort of breaking down their process that you can kind of look at it. But also, if you look at really good artists, they're skipping steps. So you're not actually seeing everything they're doing, because a lot of what they're doing is happening in their brain and it's not happening on the canvas. So I would say you can look at process videos of people who are similar to who you're looking for, and you'll get a sense of what they're doing, I imagine, because there's some that just literally just say their whole process. Like, I'm doing this and now I'm doing this. I know, like, with Clip Studio Paint, for instance, there's like a tutorial section where it has a bunch of process related things of people showing how they make webcomics or how they do this or that, and it's very useful. So yeah, I guess it depends I don't know what artist you are gravitating towards. So, but there's a chance on YouTube there's a video that shows exactly how they do it.
Yeah, I've been doing that recently, where sometimes if I really like an artist, I'll like see if they have a Patreon, and I'll go and like see, oh, how the hell do they do this? Because a lot of people post process stuff on Patreon too, so you can like $3 and you see a 5-hour video of their real-time entire workflow or something, and it's like, well, okay, get the notepad and pen out. I think I've successfully done that about like 4 or 5 times now, actually.
I was curious about the discussion you were having earlier about the things you want to do when you were a kid. Why do you think that's like so, I guess, like powerful?
I feel like it's sad to say, but I think at some point we stop evolving. Like, there's maybe not everyone, maybe it's just me, but like there's a point for me where I realize like whoever I was already kind of has been figured out. There's this expression, show me the child at 7 and I will show you the man. It works for a woman as well, but it basically means like we're sort of who we are already by the time we're 7 years old. And then there's minor changes, of course. Maybe you didn't like this, but now you do. You didn't like that, but now you do. Or you learn to appreciate something else. But generally, we have a nature, I feel like. And if you work with that nature, you tend to achieve better results. And if you work against that nature, you tend to have a bad time. So figuring out what your nature is important. So for me, for instance, my nature is that I have very low stamina, but I have very short periods of extreme activity. Like, I can do a lot in a very short time, and then I'm dead. I'm just like burnt out. Not actually dead, but just sort of like tired. So for the longest time, I focused on trying to increase my stamina, and I wanted to do things that, took more time and take it more slow, but I was never really happy with the results. It always felt like this is worse, even though I'm spending more time on it. And now what I do is I'll let myself have long breaks and do whatever I want, and sometimes even get into a place where I'm close to a deadline, so it makes me excited to finish because I'm scared. Like, it motivates me in a way. And then the harder the challenge is, the more I want to do it. So if I think about animation, whenever I think about wanting to try animation, I know that working simply is like smart, but I'm usually not interested enough. But if I give myself something overly ambitious that I feel like, I don't know if I can do this, then I'm much more excited. I'm much more interested. So again, that goes to, that is my nature. I get competitive, I have short bursts of energy, and certain colors I like are pretty consistent. as I said, you can change, so don't take it as a hard and fast rule. Of course, you can grow and evolve and change in some ways, but in a lot of fundamental ways, I think we're kind of done when we're a kid. And also, it feels like when you're like 12, maybe it's like 11, 12, 13, whatever you liked a lot at those times seem to be things that stick with you. I've noticed it just based on Final Fantasies, because like there's like different episodes, like Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, all the way, I think they're at 16 now. And if you ask someone what's your favorite Final Fantasy, if they play the game anyway, often it's whatever was the one that came out when they were 12. So I think we just like form who we are, and then we sort of stick with that. I don't know.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think it also sort of explains why everybody says, oh man, the whatever, like music, food, whatever, it was better at this time. And it's like, what time period are they hearkening back to? So like when I think of the internet being cool, I'm thinking back to like when I was 15, I guess. But yeah, it gets imprinted. Yeah, that's a good word, D-Man.
Like a baby duck.
Yeah. And I think fighting that and trying to be like, oh, I don't want to be that, kind of, it's not necessary. Like sometimes I've talked to people who feel like, oh, I don't want to, like, I shouldn't like this thing. I like it, but I should really grow up and do what other people like. But then the thing is that, like, oh, I should mature and develop my tastes more. Why? Well, there's this person who's older than me, and they say this thing is really cool. And it's like, yeah, but that's just what they liked when they were 12. Like, every generation likes its thing. Like, if you ask me what's the best Final Fantasy, I'll say Final Fantasy 7 and 6. Like, duh. But it's not. It's like, well, that's just the ones that I played first. So it's not like, oh, it's... I mean, it's so hard because I would say, like, it's not like that's the objective truth, but then inside my head, it's like, except it is. No, but it's just objectively better. But it's just what I grew up with. So I think it's important to be compassionate towards yourself and allow yourself to like the things you like. Even if they're lame, even if it's cheesy, it's fine.
Oh, what is it?
Just I'm reminded of something we've seen recently. I give you permission to heal.
Oh. Yeah, we can't talk about that on stream. That is not a...
We can't talk about that on stream.
It's not a stream topic. Okay, do we have any more questions? Or...
Yeah, there's a question from Jeremiah Bjorkman. Do you have any advice on traditional practices that would translate well to digital art?
Yeah, one of the things I'm doing lately is holding... It's kind of uncomfortable, but I'm holding my pen thing, my digital pen further back, like more towards the middle of the pen. It's uncomfortable because it's not designed that way. They keep designing these tools for writing, like as if they were writing instruments, which is annoying because for artists, like if you watch a lot of artists, depends. Some artists have very unusual ways of holding their tool, but often they'll hold the tool further back, like not really close to the front. So that can help. And that's because, we don't have better input devices. Limited palettes can help. Like, you can actually mix colors digitally the same way you do, or similarly to how you do traditionally, and it also works. That was surprising in the sense of I didn't really consider it, where you can just like put down blobs of color and then mix those together and use those to paint. You have to put them on color mode though, so that's the caveat. If you don't, everything will be the wrong value. So you set your layer mode to color, or first you mix your colors. I usually have the palette separate if I do this technique, and then you set your layer mode to color and you paint over like a grayscale usually, and then it'll fill everything and it'll be like good colors. I know with Clip Studio now they've made it so their color mixing engine works. So in digital, if you mix blue and yellow, it actually doesn't turn green. Like it turns to this grayish color, but now Clip Studio changed it where there's like a special option, and if you mix blue and yellow, it will turn green like traditional. So that's cool.
Okay, question from Hodstrat. All right, one more. Did you have that period in art where you have a bitter taste from your work, even if you enjoyed the process through the entirety of your work? If so, how did you get out of it?
Just wait. Like, don't think about it too much for myself anyway. I try to... Again, it's kind of like that being kind to yourself. You will find the things you hate about your work pretty quickly, especially if you're improving, because then you just see all the problems. So usually if you revisit the image, for me it's usually months or years later, you can see it objectively more, like how you would have seen it if it was just not your image. But it takes a while. Like I've had images that I look at them and years later I still think they're awful, and then years after that I can be like, it's not so bad, it's not as bad as I thought. So it really depends. But I would say not necessarily worrying about the result too much. Like do your best, try to get it as good as you can, and then focus on the next piece. Like don't dwell on it. Once it's like, all right, we got it to this stage, cool, now move on to the next thing.
Dadob A says, have you tried Rebel's color mixing features?
I don't know. I think we might have tried. I don't know, Flavia, did you try Rebel?
I tried it a little bit when we first got it, but because I don't have a tablet anymore, I can't really do much.
I hear they're good though.
Yeah. We saw Craig Mullins demo it a few times, and it looked really nice, the color mixing and everything. Nothing personal.
That's a nice cake.
Which?
The cake.
Oh. There's a piece of cake.
Yeah, there's a piece of cake which is... Let's just make this cake have the piece cut out.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Okay, D-Man says, your ability to see increases faster than your mechanical ability to draw and make it better.
Yep.
Christopher Infante says, today I use this stream as my horse, quote, draw while they draw, quote, goal. Took the friction out of getting started. I'm past an hour already on my storybook. Nice chilling with others. Thanks for the stream.
Yay.
Oh, that's nice.
Wave Robin says, Flavia, if you don't use a tablet, what do you use? you just mentioned you don't have one anymore.
Oh, so right now I'm only on the iPad because in the flood we lost pretty much everything else. So I have a laptop that I'm checking the chat on.
Wouldn't the iPad be considered a tablet though?
Well, it's a tablet, but it doesn't Rebel doesn't work on the iPad. I wish it did. I think it would be so good because the screen on the iPad is really good, but yeah. I have it on the laptop, but I can't do much with a mouse.
Okay, I think that's it for now for stuff from chat.
Okay. I think at this time we should ask Nick what he's thinking about.
Yeah.
I'm thinking what more I should add to this cat. I think you all kind of covered.
That's Chassis. That looks like our cat.
Yeah, that looks like Chassis.
He's even wearing glasses.
Yeah. Oh no. Bob took a piece too. Piece of the cake.
Oh.
Oh no, Wave Robin is not in with the news. It's not news anymore. It's been a while. Yeah, we got our town got flooded.
There's a video, the first stream.
It's called Where I've Been.
Yeah, something like that. It covers it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get all the nasty details there.
Okay, Hodstrat says, also, do you guys have odd ways to grip your pencil while drawing? I see good artists holding their pen straight vertically or as horizontally as the horizon line.
Well, I've seen good artists do tons of weird stuff. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule to how people hold their pens, because I had people tell me, like, oh, the correct way of holding the pencil, and it's like, well, they're really good, they're pro, and they know what they're talking about. Okay, I'll listen to that. Then I'd hear another pro say something completely different, and it's like, oh. And then you see another one doing something different. Then you see someone, like, holding their pen so strange, but their results seem perfectly fine. So I think, whatever you like, try different things, and what feels good to you, do that. But I don't think there's there are techniques that help you more, but I've even seen people where, for instance, in animation school, they were telling us things like, use your arm to draw, and that's very good. I agree. I like that way of drawing. And they're like, yeah, because otherwise you don't get gesture. But then I saw Japanese artists drawing with terrible posture, not using their arm. They were just using very small wrist motions, but they had great gesture. So it was like, oh, this makes it easier, but it doesn't mean you can't do it without.
No. D-Man asked, what are those little elephant creatures?
Oh, that's for Alpaki to explain.
Yeah.
They're little Mr. Dinkles.
Oh.
I'm not going to elaborate any further. They're little Mr. Dinkles.
Okay.
They're balls and elephants.
But
But they don't have ears. They don't need them. They can smell you from 800 miles away. Pinpoint your location.
I can smell what the rock is cooking.
Apparently he's cooking cheese.
You guys ever watched this kind of old sort of cartoon short called Happy Tree Friends?
Yes.
I
Unfortunately.
know of it.
This kind of reminds me of creatures that would be in that show.
Oh no.
Oh, I see.
Oh no. Oh no.
Well, they will not combust anytime soon. I promise you that.
Okay. Keely Mine says, this feels like a recurrent concept in art. There not being strict rules to an extent.
Yeah, I think it's a recurrent concept in life. It's just that sometimes people think they are or prefer to live as if there are strict rules, and I think it's usually to poor effect. We're just different. People like different things. It's fine. It's kind of how it's supposed to be, I feel like. To just have things you like, and yeah.
Elro here says, would you say drawing is more about knowledge or physical ability?
Knowledge, definitely. If someone told me that I could retain all my knowledge in art but lose all my physical ability, or I could keep physical ability but lose all my knowledge, I would definitely choose to keep my knowledge. That said, both are important, but knowledge is much more important. And with knowledge, you can do things in different media because you still have that understanding. So you could do
like
3D.
A great artist who became like paraplegic or something could probably find a way to set their eye to like create pixel art by like staring at a pixel for a long time, and it would still be fantastic. Like it would still have form and like
There was an
gesture and
artist. There was an artist like this. I forgot who he was, but it was many years ago. He got very ill, and he got this illness, and then he wasn't able to draw. And then at some point, he was drawing with his mouth.
Yeah,
I
we
believe.
had one. We had a Romanian painter who was pretty famous for that. He also lost his ability to move, and then at first he would tie the brush to his forearm and paint like that, and then he would just paint with his mouth when he couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think generally knowledge is the thing to search for, and then translation, like knowledge and translation, getting information, figuring out how to make that work for you, seems to be very, very important. And looking at how to do something, like how to draw, often they don't really explain the knowledge part of it as much. It's more the technique, but I feel like technique is the variable thing. It's sort of the how do you interpret this is more technical, but what is this is more I guess objective or universal. Figuring out what a thing is, and then what's your spin on it. And I think in a lot of cases sometimes style is even just that we are different humans. So, for instance, if I wanted to draw a thumb, I might look at my thumb and use that as reference, but my thumb's going to look different than someone else's thumb. So, my understanding, if it's based on myself, will be different than someone else's, but because it's still a thumb, it'll look about right. It'll still function relatively the same. It'll be believable, but it'll not be the same. Like, not everyone will have the same result. So,
Killing Mind says, what do you mean by translation?
translation is how you interpret something. So, if we looked at the same object, we would probably see different things in that object. You might see the same things, but you might see different things. I know there have been like experiments done on the difference between Eastern cultures and how they see things and Western cultures and how they see things. Like in Western cultures, you tend to focus more on individual objects, and in Eastern cultures, they tend to focus on a scene as a whole. So, for instance, I think there was something where there were fish, and then they asked Western people, there's like a fish tank, I believe, and it was different kinds of fish, and there were like a school of fish, and then there was like one like very brightly colored fish, and they asked them like, oh, which one was the most memorable fish? And the Eastern cultures were saying the school of fish was more memorable, and the Western cultures were saying the brightly colored unique fish was more memorable. So it's just like, okay, we have translated these two things differently, but they were derived from the same source. So I think the way you think about things can change quite a bit. So let me do an example. I'll just delete it after, but okay. So let's say there's an eye, right? Here, draw an eye. Okay, now you have lashes, and the lashes sort of come out like that, right? Like sort of emerge from underneath the lid, and they go out. Now you can think of those. You could simplify those in a couple of different ways. Oh, I reached the maximum. Okay, so I could simplify that. The lashes come out like something like this. Like, oh, the lashes are coming out from underneath this eyelid and going up. Or I could think of it tonally. Like you get a mass that sort of is like in this shape and it goes around. And then maybe have some breaks to indicate the separation between lashes, but that generally as a tone they seem to kind of clump together. Like it's just different ways of seeing the same thing, and that is translation. Like you saw this thing, how did you interpret it? That is your own unique way of interpreting the world. And as you look at things, so for instance, someone might look at an object and it looks very red to them, and someone else might look at that and it looks more purpley to them, and it's like, okay, that is your translation of the thing you see. You can also translate in terms of how you want to simplify a thing. Maybe you look at someone looks at a tree trunk and they see a very cylindrical round form. Not round as in all the way around, but a cylindrical form. And someone else looks at a tree trunk and they see a very stark rectangular shape. And which one is right and which one is wrong? Well, neither. It's just different ways of perceiving the same thing.
Hey, Elro here says, what would you say is the worst art advice you hear most commonly?
I don't know. What are your guys' worst art advice?
I told my friend, I remember, I regret it to this day. 5 years ago, he's like, I want to get into art. And I'm like, oh, I've never done it, but I heard draw boxes is the way to go or something. And he said it was like miserable and he quit because of that.
Oh.
Oh.
Anything that's not have fun, I feel like is bad advice. Like, I feel like having fun is the most important thing of art that you can do. Or maybe fun is too... maybe it's not the best word. Something that is meaningful to you. Maybe that's better. Because it could be fun, but it could be stimulating but not fun. Like it could be very challenging, very difficult. Maybe it's even sometimes it's like agonizing, and yet it's interesting.
Yeah, I think meaning is the right term. Someone said, "Don't use reference. Reference is cheating." It's like, yeah, that's terrible advice.
Oh yeah, don't use reference. It's awful.
Yeah,
but
I think right now that takes the cake for me.
I
Don't
think
use
it's just like where the thing with reference is that it's supposed to be what you use to understand the world, and if you're using it directly, it can be harmful in the sense of you'll get into copy mode too quickly, and I think copying stuff can be very detrimental. It's like, how do you use reference? But we already talked about that.
Yeah.
The translation thing kind of goes into that.
We got a question from Jeremiah Bjorkman. What are your thoughts on mastering realism before stylization?
I wouldn't focus on mastering, because mastering is that's a very high bar.
Yeah.
It depends, because, okay, so the old idea of mastery was that you start as an apprentice, and then you have a master. And then you work and work and work until you're now good enough that your work is like good enough to be sold, and then you are a master, and then you go off and do your own thing. I think master now sort of has more of the idea of like a grandmaster, like you are extremely good in this field. And I think before it was that you had to be extremely good. It was just taken for granted that you would be spending years of your life in training under a master. You'd be like a disciple or whatever, apprentice. But I don't think you need to master it. Like, consider this. Even when you stylize, you will be going to reference. Like, you don't stop looking at reference. You just learn more and more and have to either rely on reference less, or you will discover more within the reference. So you might have only seen certain details. Like maybe you look at a tree from reference, and at first you're just trying to get the proportions right. Okay, now you have a general sense of the proportions, but then you could just say, okay, now I know that tree, I can just draw that tree, I'm done. Or you might realize like, oh, actually now I'm starting to notice things about the branches, or things about the texture, or things about the leaves. I didn't realize, oh, this one looks like this one, it's having fruit, or whatever. It's just you expand, but you always use reference. You're always looking at things. And the thing is, when I say use reference, that doesn't mean I opened a photo and I've stuck it beside my drawing and now I'm looking at that. Reference can mean walking around in nature and looking at a bush and observing some quality about it. Like, oh, I noticed the leaves are really spiky looking. And then kind of paying attention more. And, oh, yeah, they kind of have like this shape on the contour that's very pointy. And, oh, that's interesting. So by reference, I just mean looking at the world in whatever way. Like, might be a photograph, might not be a photograph, but just, yeah, looking and paying attention to the things around.
Yeah, I think because Sandra said, I still don't like using reference because I'm stubborn about it. I think if you're stubborn about it, that stubbornness is probably giving you something psychologically. So if you kind of figure out what it is to you, what battle you're fighting mentally, I think that could be a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
You could always use reference in like a way that still makes you feel like good about yourself, like you achieve something. Like look at like a picture of like a horse or something, but draw the horse in like a completely different angle than what you're actually looking at, just so that like, and now you're like, oh my god, I reinterpreted. Is that a word? I don't know.
Reinterpreted.
Yeah. That form in like 3 dimensions in my brain turned it around and then redrew it, and it still looks good. And then you can like feel good about yourself.
Well, that's how I ended up with the marmots in the first, like, not ended up with the marmots, but ended up with this style of buff marmot. So I got this photo pack of this really buff looking guy. And I tried to draw him a little bit, like just from reference, but then I ended up turning him into marmots, and then he just became a really buff marmot doing different poses and stuff. So roll down the hill from there to now.
Oh, all right. Looks like that's about all we have for time now. Thank you everyone for the questions, and thanks you guys for answering them and for your wonderful artworks. My special guests today, again, have been Alpaki, Bob, Dekru, Nick, and Flavia. And I just want to go ahead and thank you again for everyone who's watching. And we will talk to you again next week. I don't... there's 1 week, I think, where I might have to miss the stream.
Yeah.
But either it's next week or it's a week after, I think. But anyway, if we're around, tune in next week. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.